This is a Squiz podcast. We're your shortcut to being informed.
Kerri, you're the director of 9.com.au, so you run the website editorially. I gather that's what it means, but tell me if I'm wrong. Give it to me in your words.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I pretty much think that I get paid to be creative every day, and there is no better job in the world than when you get to do that every day. It's my favourite thing. I think it's why I've been in the game for so long. But what do I do as director of 9.com? I'll do the actual sales pitch. 9.com is a house of brands. So 9.com is the big overarching hero brand. That's the brand that has an audience of 10 million a month. That is the homepage that everyone comes to. And then offshoots of that are all our individual verticals. So 9news.com, widewatersports.com, 9honey, which is the lifestyle brand that I founded along with Helen McCabe. Then we have all the TV show websites, everything from Today's Show to 60 Minutes to everyone's favourite Married at First Sight. We also have a shopping website, and then we just recently launched a travel website. So 9.com is the umbrella above all that, and I look after all of them.
How commercial is it? Your
Very
job?
commercial.
Yeah, explain that to me a little bit.
So given that we are a free mass market website, there is no subscription revenue. So everything is ads, whether that's display ads, whether that's pre-roll ads on the videos, whether that's, the brought to you by campaigns that you'll see. So I need to be very commercially minded or there is no website.
For the skeptics out there who might be thinking, oh, okay, so everything I'm reading has like a commercial bent to it, explain why that isn't the case.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I'm giving you a bone. I'm throwing you a bone there. I know there's people that think it, right?
They do.
Yeah.
But look, there are varying degrees of where commercial appears on a website like 9.com.au and all the verticals that come with it. So clearly something like 9 News, that is a straight up and down factual news website. Something like Wide World of Sports, that is the same. I guess you would look for your broader commercial opportunities in areas like lifestyle or parenting or travel, where it would not be out of the norm to have this hotel series brought to you by X.
So, yeah.
And you will more see the ads in terms of there'll be a pre-roll on a video. There'll be ads around an article. But if anything is clearly commercially sponsored, there will be clear indicators, a brought to you by tag, a disclaimer written on an article. So I'd like to think we're pretty clearly signposted, as is everyone who operates in that free commercial market space.
Interesting. I want to just step back and talk about you a little bit because I feel like when people take the time to listen to a podcast like this, they want to know the person a bit. I obviously read your bio, had a look into your history. I've known you a little bit.
Yeah.
One thing I read is that you got offered your first job live on air.
I did, yes. So I was not long out of college. I went to Macleay College and couldn't get a job. And my mum had said to me, you need to write to Alan Jones. I didn't know what talkback radio was. I didn't know who Alan Jones was. But I wrote to a million different radio stations, and what was the market leader back then, 2UE, got back to me. Alan Jones got back to me. And this was actually the start of a career that almost never was. So as you would know, breakfast radio, the shift starts at 5:30. That's when the on-air shift starts. So you need to be in at 3 a.m. I'm 19. I've got no idea of this. I missed my entire first day of work experience. I don't turn up because I didn't think to ring in advance. I wasn't that grown up at that stage. Thankfully, when I rang at 9 a.m. on the day I was supposed to start, there's a lovely woman, Edwina, who is still a mate of mine to this day, who said, it's okay, come in the next day. She could have easily have cut me loose and
Dobbed
said
you in.
no. But they allowed me to come in for a week of work experience, which I absolutely loved, and then I pretty much just refused to leave. So I stayed for several months working every day for free and writing, and it was an editorial that I wrote about the Strathfield massacre that eventually got passed along to radio legend John Brennan and to Alan Jones, and they ended up putting me on air and offering me a job live on air, which kind of meant that, when a radio broadcaster offers you a job live on air, they couldn't really say no.
I was going to say, you didn't have much choice then.
No, but I mean, they couldn't say no. So once a broadcaster offers you a job live on air, it's like, oh, well, you've said that now to everyone.
Yeah.
And I ended up staying at 2UE for 8 years.
Why did you love it so much? Because clearly you just explained in that 7 days of work experience or whatever it was, you just loved it.
I was staying. I don't know. I think I was lucky. I knew very early on I wanted to be a journo. I will be a journalist till the day they drag me out of whatever building I'm in.
I should add that you have been a long-time Squizzer as well. And the minute we launched the newsletter,
Squizzer.
you have been reading it. So thank you for
I
all
read
your
the
support.
newsletters. I listen to the podcasts. I tell everyone about it. I am a Squizzer.
Thank you. You then moved into TV.
Yes.
During your time, the early days of TV, that you were working at the Today Show, I believe.
Yes.
Is that right? A couple of really big things happened. So we had September 11, Bali bombings. I mean, you talk about your passion for news and the excitement that it brings you, but it can be really full on.
Yeah.
I'm curious about how a newsroom approaches these big, fast-moving stories and also how you manage yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I can probably give a now and then example. So, I did start in the Today Show, and some of the biggest stories I remember are September 11, the Boxing Day tsunami, the Bali bombings. I mean, those times it is all about getting the correct information to your audience, to family members who might be watching, being respectful and factual. You know, you'll often hear journos talk about you would rather be right than be first, which is something that we still carry on through to this day. I can remember, in particular during the Boxing Day tsunami, I was running the Today Show at the time because the boss was on holidays, and I was also 6 months pregnant and doing, I can't even tell you, 16 hours a day for about 16 days straight. And I think I got to about that 16th day and said, right, someone else needs to take over because the self-care does kick in. And then I guess if you fast forward to, I look after a team of about 80 now, of about 25 of them are news journalists. And when you have those incredibly big stories like the Bondi stabbings, along with making sure you are factual and up to date, one of the first conversations I had with my editor was, how are the team? Let's look after them. The images are really distressing. So much has changed in such a good way about how we think about the impact those big stories have on teams and making sure that they are supported, making sure they don't have to always cover and repeatedly cover those really distressing stories, because we want our journos in this for the long haul, and some of the stories they cover can be really full on. So self-care, their care is front of mind for me always.
I think it's the same for audiences, people listening. And the news fatigue thing is really, really real. And
absolutely.
particularly potentially the last 5 years through the pandemic and after that. And we've asked our audience about that, and it's definitely a factor for them. One of the great things, I guess, about your job is you get to do the fun stuff as well.
Yes.
What's your favourite fun stuff?
Oh, goodness me. Well, probably at the moment it's travel.
Okay.
So we're pretty brand new in the travel space. We launched our website 9 Travel about 3 months ago. And I can't tell you what a joy it is to go into a meeting and be like, all right, we've got an airline pitch. Let's come up with 10 different ways we can showcase this airline, you know. And then lifestyle is always incredibly fun too. All right, we've got a fast food client. What are the ways we can look at here? And at the moment, Olympics, 9 has the Olympics for the next 10 years. So, of course, running Wide World of Sports, you're in a lot of Olympic briefs. So that is the really fun stuff. Or if you take the really, really, really super fun and popular stuff, we're on the Married at First Sight website. That is fun. There is no more fun than brainstorming ideas around Married at First Sight. What can you do with the show at the moment? How can you chat to former contestants and bring them in? It's so much fun because it is the number one show in the country. Even people who pretend they don't watch it, they really do watch it. It's probably the website I get asked about the most. So I think what you were saying before, Kate, news fatigue is so real. We've seen it ever since COVID. You know, after, it's so foreign now to even think about lockdowns and what they were like, and like even remembering the 11 a.m. press conferences that you'd be glued to every day. What are the numbers? What borders are shut? What are we... People have moved away from that, and that is, I guess, one of the best things about a website like 9.com. We always say people come to us for the news, but they stay for everything else. And that's why our page will have something like Biden at the top of the page and everything going on with him. But right next to that could be the Venice Film Festival red carpet, could be a celebrity birth, could be something that's happened to someone on maths, because people want that light and shade. There is so much bad news in the world. They want to be entertained. They need to be entertained. I sound like Robbie Williams.
It's an interesting question, I guess, and I didn't sort of intend to ask you this, but It's kind of what we should have and what we want are two different things. How do you think about that? And I guess what I'm thinking about it is in the context of the possibility that we might not see news on social media anymore. I've asked a lot of our guests this question. A lot of people will say, well, that doesn't really matter because I go to social media to be entertained. I don't need to get my news there. And even what you're saying to me on a website, like, people would still come there even if there wasn't the Biden story or there wasn't the hard story or there wasn't the sad story or there wasn't the important policy announcement or whatever it is. Why do you think it has to be there?
Oh, goodness. I guess I've got a couple of answers to that question. I would hope that websites like the one that I look after are going to be around for a really long time, because a world where you can't get news, get facts from any platform that you choose, I think is a really scary world. The other thing I would say is thinking about my own kids. I have a 20-year-old and a 19-year-old. They don't watch commercial television. They wouldn't know what website I work for. They get everything that they see off social media, whether it is Snapchat, whether it is TikTok, whether it is probably some other website I haven't heard of. For them to never be served up any kind of news is really, really scary to me. So I would think that there is going to be a place for news. I would like to think there is a place for news and those kind of truthful stories on all platforms. But certainly I would rather you come to my platform direct.
Of course.
Where you can control what you see, when you see it, as opposed to what you are served by a media giant.
So the question then is, what is your social media strategy? How do you use social media as a business to drive traffic to your site?
Yeah, look, absolutely. Social is a very important part of what we do, but it is not the focus of what we do. We talk a lot about direct traffic, so the traffic we can control ourselves. So whether that's from newsletters, which you guys know about, whether that is from WhatsApp, we've just launched our own WhatsApp channels, whether that is from the related links or the read more links you put in your articles. We are very focused on how we control our own ecosystem. Our approach to social is to make sure we're always on there, always present with the latest news, that we're not just a link farm. No one wants to come to a social media site where it's just click here for more. So you do mix it up with pictures and videos and polls, but of course the referrals are important, but you can never rely on socials. I would never be building a business on socials alone, because as we've seen in the last couple of years and as we're seeing right now, it's very tricky territory when you don't control what happens there.
But given you just said, I guess, though, that your sons don't go onto websites, what's the future of web publishing in your mind?
The future of web publishing, look, given that we're all living a lot longer, I think
there's a lot of people between the age of 20 and 90 or whatever.
Exactly. And I think you access news in different ways. Yes, there's a big generational change, but there will always be a place for news websites like ours, just as there'll always be a place for commercial free-to-air television. Yes, there's an advent of streaming, but commercial TV is doing okay. Yes, there's a absolute rise in social media, but news websites like mine, they're also doing okay. I think there is a happy medium where we can all exist.
I wanted to ask you, actually, we've missed a whole part of your sort of career where you worked at a current affair.
Oh, wonderful.
And that was one of the, you loved that. You talked very passionately about that. Why did you love that so much?
A current affair teaches you so much about storytelling, about what matters to Australians. The fact that you don't have to take yourself so seriously all the time. And the fact that the cliche is true, that shows like a current affair fight for everyday Australians. I mean, you see it in the people who contact you. You see it in the stories. People, when they feel they have no option, when no one is listening to them, will come to a current affair. And when you can literally, as cliche as it sounds, change someone's life because they came to you and you were able to get an answer for them, get an outcome for them, there's nothing better.
Is that how you, I guess what you would have been able to do when you were at a current affair is really stay in touch with Australia and with Australians and everyday people. How do you do that now?
Oh, honestly, I took so much of what I learned on a current affair about putting your audience first, about understanding who your audience is. And so I've said to so many of my team, look, this website that you work on might not be for you. You know, it might be more for your mum, your neighbour, your school friends. Like the stories that you're writing, I know you're passionate about, but we need it to be something that our entire audience is going to care about. And I think knowing your audience, knowing who you're writing for before you put a single finger to a keyboard is key to the success of our website. And that's something we talk to the team about all the time. Know your audience before you pitch a story, before you write a story.
What do people love? So I just had a quick browse just before you came in at 9 Honey, for example, and I know it's a site you're incredibly proud of and you should be. Is it royals? Is it what is the stuff that goes, as you would probably say, and I would say in media, what goes off?
Oh, absolutely. So if we take news off the table, in a news category, it's breaking news.
Yes.
Any day of the week, it is breaking news. But in terms of what do they like in other verticals, all right, let's go through it.
Yeah.
For sport, at the moment it's Wimbledon. Olympics obviously is huge. Our audience like boxing. They like motor racing. It's all the everyday topics that you would chat about. When it comes to lifestyle, it's royals. Meghan appeared today for the first time. Is Kate going to turn up at the final of Wimbledon? When Kate turned up for the first time after her cancer diagnosis, I can't even tell you. We had a full team on in lifestyle at 11 o'clock at night when she made her appearance at the Trooping of the Colours.
Yeah, wow.
The audience love the royal family. They also love something quirky. Our biggest story for the past couple of months is why you should not tie a ribbon on your suitcase. I cannot tell you 500,000 page views on that story. People loved it. If you write stories on mould, how to stop mould. If you write stories on the best places to holiday, the best beaches, it's the kind of stuff that you'd talk about with your girlfriends, the kind of stuff that you might find yourself Googling on your phone. We're really tapped into that stuff. And the thing that every media person now has is so much data. You can just get caught up in it every second of the day. But you know what they're reading the second that they're reading it. You can analyse it in real time. And then you can also take some time after the fact to look at it and go, wow, gee, what was it about that? Was it that they stayed on the article for a long time? Did they come to us from social for that article? Was it something they searched up and found us for? Was it the video they were watching? Was it the fact that it was a current affairs story that they then wanted to read more about? You use the data and what you know about your audience, and that should hopefully equal a really successful article and a really successful website.
I'm imagining in your office you have a big screen that says this is the top story. Is that how it works? And how much of it is data and how much of it is instinct?
It's both, I would say. You need both.
Okay.
I'm a journo who has relied a lot of the time on her gut, and increasingly over the past few years I've relied a lot more on data. Or I'd like to say you combine the two.
Okay.
You need journalistic creativity because you need original content. You can't just have the same stories that every other website has. And increasingly we are seeing it as those original takes, that original content that will get the big numbers for you. Because otherwise you're serving up the same meal on 6 different sites.
We've all seen that before.
Exactly. So, of course, you're going to have the staples. You're all going to have the breaking news, sport, lifestyle and entertainment. But it's those points of difference, which in my case is, having the digital rights to things like the Olympics, like Married at First Sight, like The Block that's about to start. When you've got exclusive, original stuff that can elevate you beyond what everyone else has, that's where true success lies.
I need to ask you about your time in front of the camera.
Oh,
you went and covered Harry and Meghan's wedding.
Yes, that was pretty amazing.
Well, you got to meet Harry and
I
William.
did.
Given we know people love royals, I can't not ask you about that.
It was amazing.
Because Squizzes are the same. They love the royal content.
It was amazing. So the very quick backstory was when I put my hand up to be editor of 9 Honey when Helen McKay was launching it, I said, look, I don't do on camera. She went, no, that's fine. And then when she hired me, she said, no, guess what? You will do on camera. I was like, oh my gosh. So I built myself up and I would do weekly, daily television segments talking about 9 Honey and the topics. And then when Harry and Meghan were getting married, Helen said, okay, well, off you go. It's like, okay, wow, amazing. So I found myself over there not only doing daily news crosses from London, telling 9 News and the 9 Honey audience what we were doing. Somehow I found myself in the royal broadcast as well. So ahead of that, we were in Windsor having a look around and the rumour was that the night before a royal wedding that the princes do a walk around. They did it for William's wedding, and the rumour was they'd do it in Windsor. So we got there and thought, okay, me and my London 9 Honey producer Karishma got there and said, okay, I'll stand at this end of the castle, you stand there. We deliberately did not stand with the media. We stood with the public, stood there for 5 hours. But it is an amazing 5 hours because you are with people from all around the world who are all there to see the princes. You're not with the media pack. And then you just start kind of feeling a change. A lot more police come out. A lot more people come out in suits in walkie-talkies and you're like, they're coming, they're coming, they're coming. And then the next thing, the gates of Windsor Castle open, out come Harry and Will. The crowd is going insane and they start doing their walk. And there are people lined up for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of metres and you don't know where they're going to do, what they're going to say. But we kind of figured that they would not go to the media pack, which they didn't. And as luck would have it, because I'd been there so long, because I am so committed, I was at the front. And I think it was Harry came along first, shot my hand out and just said, "Hi, Harry, I'm Kerri from Australia. Congratulations and good luck." And was thrilled to meet him. And, of course, you're filming on your iPhone at the same time as you're trying to talk. And then William came over and I did the same thing, said, "Hi, Harry, I'm Kerri from Australia." And that stopped him in his tracks. So he stood there and spoke with me for, gosh, it was probably 90 seconds or 2 minutes all up.
That is a long time,
saying,
though.
"Oh, I can't believe you're here from Australia. Where have you been? Are you camped out?" He was laughing about, "There's a woman down there who's got gin and tonics if you want them." And he was so lovely. And we had this great chat. Couldn't believe it. They're only out in the street for about 3 minutes or something. They did about 100-metre walk. Didn't even make it to my colleague who was further down. And then they turn around, wave and leave. And you're there going, "Oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God."
So what did you do? So you immediately send the footage?
Race back to the studio.
Yeah.
Write an article about it for 9 Honey. Upload all the video that I've got and, get it out on social and in the articles. Then went on, I think was it on, because with all the time zones being different, it was the Today Show on air when it was London nighttime, then did the Today Show live with Ali Langdon, and then hilariously woke up the next morning to my phone just going off and there was a picture of William chatting to me on the royal family's Instagram account. Please, stop it. Oh, my God. Amazing.
Is it still there?
Oh, look, probably if you scroll back it would be.
Yeah.
And I love it when you get those Instagram and Facebook memories and you see that pop up and you're like, man.
That's amazing.
Different time. But
I did not know that's where this was going.
Absolutely amazing. It was so much fun. And then the next day got to actually sit next to Ali Langdon and commentate on the royal wedding with her and the entire 9 team.
I remember watching that.
It was like, how did I end up here? But despite all that, which sounds like a ridiculous fairy tale story, which it was, behind the camera is where I am much more comfortable.
You might not remember this, but you actually did an interview with the Squiz, a 3-minute Squiz. We used to do
Yes.
a little interview with some of our readers.
Is this a written one?
Yeah, the written one.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, it was when we first launched the business. We asked you, and you definitely won't remember your answer, so let me read it to you. What would you say is the most currently overlooked news story we should know about? This would have been, I reckon, 5 years ago.
Okay.
Do you remember what your answer was?
No.
So your answer was anxiety and depression in kids.
Oh, yes.
Navigating your way to adulthood nowadays is completely different to what we all went through. We need to make sure our kids are okay. I'm really interested in that, particularly on reflection. We've got a huge conversation happening at the moment about social media and potentially a ban on social media for those under the age of 16. Where is that part of this? What were you worried about at the time, and are your concerns still there?
Look, I think every parent, you don't need to be a journalist, is concerned about their kids, the pressures that they grow up with. I mean, we didn't have social media. I mean, thank goodness. Imagine all the, not only the embarrassing stuff that'd be out there about you, but just that people can have access to you and your thoughts 24 hours a day. And that is incredibly scary. I certainly think probably since that comment, and I'm so glad you reminded me of it, a lot probably has changed. I think we do take it a lot more seriously now. It's not just seen as, oh, you're a teenager, you'll grow out of it. There is real understanding about the pressures of growing up in a social media era, what a real and ever-present problem anxiety is, especially in young people. It's something that I am consistently aware of. I look after and I mentor a lot of young journos, and I'm saying in charge of, I am
You're the boss.
The boss of, a lot of young journos, and their mental health, their mental well-being is always at the forefront, which goes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier, making sure that they are supported despite the topics that they talk about. But I would say, in answer to your question, I do think that topic is now at the forefront. I don't think it's underrepresented. I think we speak about it a lot, and I think what is even more important is that young people are speaking about it too, and they're not afraid to speak up and put their mental health first. What
would you say now is one of the most overlooked news stories?
Certainly not the royals.
We get a lot of that.
Look, I'm in a certain way it could be navel-gazing, but I would just say the importance of the media. The media is clearly in a challenging time. We are not the only network who has made news, made headlines, been the story themselves over job cuts and a weak advertising market. So I would say the survival of media is probably a story that I would like to become mainstream important, because having access to a free press is something that should be important to everyone, and making sure that we don't disappear from social platforms, that free news services still exist, I think is really important. So, if I can be selfish and navel gaze for a moment, I'd say the longevity of the media is a really important story right now.
Given you are so in touch with how to communicate to Australians, I guess, how would you advise might be the wrong word, but how do we go about that as publishers, as media? How do we go about explaining to people the risks that are before us if we don't have a healthy media ecosystem?
Gee, that is a good question. The interesting thing is, while the media is so important to truth-telling, I think it is, you don't want to bore people with the backstory of why it's important.
Or lecture people, because that sounds really self-serving. Keep me in a job. The media is important. I would like to think that the work would speak for itself. Keep telling good stories. Keep doing good work. Keep telling stories that matter. But the challenge is, how do you reach that younger audience? As we know, they are social creatures. They are glued to their phones, glued to technology. It can be difficult to communicate with them. Just ask any parent with teenage kids. It's hard to get more than a one-word answer out of them on anything. So, I think if I had that answer, I'd probably be a billionaire at this stage. I think all we can do is keep banging the drum of how important a stable free media is in Australia. Keep doing quality work that is important, and keep telling the stories that matter to our audience. One of the challenges, and I guess maybe one of the ways to do it is to just help people understand what we're talking about when we're saying challenges. You would be well across, I guess, Google's latest announcement about Google Overview and the AI advancements they've made. The idea being that basically it will bypass publishers. So you'll be able to Google something. And I've explained this for people who have listened to all of these Newsmaker podcasts, and a lot of our podcasts, I have said this a lot, so apologies. But for those who are just listening to Kerri because they love Kerri and haven't heard this before, basically you will no longer need to necessarily go to a publisher's site to get information. You will search for something like, why shouldn't I tie a ribbon to my suitcase? Google will scrape your site, that story
and
that you wrote.
And you'll get the Google version.
And you'll get the Google version. Is this keeping you up at night?
Absolutely it is. That is something we're keeping an incredibly close eye on. It's happening overseas already. It's not here in Australia as yet. But for publications like ours, for a lot of publications, the places you get your traffic from are your direct traffic that we spoke about. It's search, Google traffic, let's face it, or it's social traffic. And search traffic is a very big part of what we do. and we work incredibly hard on it. You know, most major media organisations have several people who are dedicated to that search traffic and how to get it. So if that dries up, that is an incredible problem for all publishers. And we don't have a paywall or a subscriber base that brings us that revenue. So, yeah, we're very concerned and certainly keeping a very close eye on what's happening with that.
There's a lot happening overseas with regards to maybe potentially new business models around how you might be able to commercialise your content, doing deals with the likes of Google. And I know there's been no announcements made locally, but as you said, I'm sure you're keeping a close eye on it. Final question. I did ask you what keeps you up at night, and I kind of put words into your mouth though, but I'm assuming that all the AI changes and all of that tech stuff. What are you hopeful about?
What am I hopeful about? Goodness me. What, in life or in media?
I mean, where do you want to take it? No, I mean, I guess we've talked about some big things that are worrying and concerning, but what can we get excited about when it comes to media?
There is so much to get excited about, and a lot of it is specific to us, but a lot of it is the media in general. The Olympics, of course. Hopefully by the time this airs, we have so many gold medals, and then the focus turns to the Paralympics. We'll have a 2-week break, and then the Paralympics will be on, which will be incredible. We've already started speaking to a lot of the athletes, being involved in a lot of the pre-planning and events. So the Paralympics, I think, are going to be something special as well. From a purely selfish point of view, it's 20 years of the block. Who doesn't love a reno? So we will have a massive end of year with 20 years of the block. And I have been down to the block. I can tell you it is amazing. It makes me want to move to Phillip Island immediately. You know?
There you go.
There is so much to come. There is so much joy, despite the doom and gloom, the terrible stories we read and report on. There is so much joy. There is so much joy to be had, and I am an eternal optimist.
You can tell. Kerri, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.